If imagine the person you love most in the world suddenly feels like an alien from another planet.
Oh, wow.
You know the feeling, right? You're looking across the kitchen island at someone who looks completely familiar to you, but all of a sudden they're speaking a completely different language.
Like they're operating on a totally different set of logical rules.
Exactly. Your attempts to comfort them only make them angry. And then their attempts to help you just leave you feeling incredibly isolated.
Right.
But what if the reason for this profound disconnect isn't that your relationship is broken, but rather that your partner actually is an alien?
That's the perfect way to frame it.
Well, welcome to the Book Nook. This is our space where we take a stack of incredible source material and just, extract the hidden mechanics of the world and the people around us.
It's so great to be here for this one.
Today, we are opening up a true landmark text. We're doing a deep dive into the legendary relationship manual, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray, PhD.
It really is a foundational text. I mean, it completely redefined how an entire generation talked about relationships.
Yeah.
And its core concepts are still echoing in couples therapy today. Our mission for this deep dive is to really explore the original source material. So we're pulling from the core chapters of the book to extract the practical everyday tools that Gray offers.
Which we all need.
Exactly. We want to help you, the listener, decode the often confusing behaviors of the opposite sex. Like, if you've ever felt completely baffled by your partner, the goal here is to give you a structural understanding of why they act the way they do.
Right, to help you avoid those unnecessary draining arguments.
Yeah, and ultimately foster a much more forgiving and tolerant relationship. We aren't just going to skim the pop culture catchphrases here.
No, we're really going to look under the hood at the psychological mechanics of why we misunderstand each other so profoundly. So, if we want to understand the modern conflicts in your relationship today, we first have to understand the origin story of this disconnect. And Gray sets this up with a really compelling foundational metaphor.
The amnesia metaphor.
Yes, it's the idea of collective amnesia. He asks you to imagine this scenario, right? Martians and Venusians, living on their completely separate planets with entirely separate cultures, look through their telescopes one day. They discover each other, they fall madly in love, they invent space travel, and they move to Earth together to start a new life. Everything is fantastic.
For a while, anyway.
Right, exactly. Because the Earth's atmosphere does something strange to them. One morning, they wake up with selective amnesia. They completely forget that they are entirely different species.
They forget they have different customs, different biology.
And entirely different value systems.
Right.
And from that day forward, men and women have been in conflict. The core premise is that we simply forgot that we are supposed to be different.
And that amnesia really is the root of so much of our interpersonal pain. I mean, think about how this plays out in your own life. We instinctively expect the opposite sex to be just like us.
Yeah, we desire them to want exactly what we want.
Right. And to process feelings exactly the way we process feelings, we operate on this incredibly flawed subconscious assumption that if our partners truly love us, they will react and behave in the exact ways we react and behave when we love someone.
Which is just a setup for constant daily disappointment.
Exactly. It's exhausting. To cure this amnesia, we have to actually study the native values of these two distinct planets. Let's start with Mars.
Okay, let's go to Mars.
On Mars, the entire culture revolves around power, competency, efficiency, and achievement.
So it's all about what you can do.
Right. A Martian is basically always doing things to prove his competence. His entire sense of self is defined by his ability to achieve results. And here's the absolute critical part. He must achieve those results autonomously.
Oh, autonomously. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. To a man, autonomy isn't just a preference. It is the ultimate symbol of efficiency and capability. If he can't do it himself, he feels his value is diminished.
So if a man's whole identity is wrapped up in his autonomous achievements, that paints a very specific picture of how he operates. Mars is essentially all about the bottom line, the independent victory, the tangible result.
Absolutely.
But if we look at Venus, the text describes a culture that is practically the mirror opposite.
It really is.
Venusian culture values love, communication, beauty, and relationships above all else. They don't spend their time building monuments to their achievements. They spend their time supporting, helping, and nurturing one another.
Right, the focus is entirely different.
Yeah, a woman's sense of self, according to Gray, is defined through her feelings and the quality of her relationships, not through achieving a task all by herself.
Communication is the highest priority there.
Right. Sharing personal feelings is infinitely more important than building a highway or like reaching a quarterly goal. So if you're listening to this, imagine these two fundamentally different value systems colliding in your living room every single night.
It is a profound collision, and it leads directly to the two biggest, most common mistakes we make in our relationships.
The classic mistakes.
Yeah. Because Martians value competence and problem solving above everything. When a woman is upset, a man's absolute first instinct is to put on his Mr. Fix-It hat.
Oh, Mr. Fix-It.
He
Yes.
immediately offers unsolicited solutions. Why? Because on Mars, that is how you show love. You solve the problem to make the pain go away.
But when a woman is upset, she doesn't want solutions. She wants empathy. She wants to be heard.
Exactly. And conversely, because Venusians value growth and nurturing, women instinctively form what Gray calls a home improvement committee.
The Home Improvement Committee.
Right. When a man makes a mistake or even just approaches a task differently than she would, she offers unsolicited advice to help him improve.
Just trying to be helpful.
Exactly. But to a man, because his whole identity is based on his competence, this unsolicited advice doesn't feel like love. It feels like a direct, aggressive attack on his capability.
I want to really dig into this Mr. Fix-It versus Home Improvement Committee dynamic because it's so incredibly common. Gray gives a phenomenal example in the book of how this plays out in real time.
The driving story.
Yes, the story of Tom and Mary driving to a party. You can probably picture yourself in this exact scenario. Tom is driving, he refuses to use a map, and after going around the same block a few times, Mary realizes he is definitively lost.
We've all been there.
Right. So out of a place of genuine love and a desire to nurture, Mary suggests he pull over and call someone for help. That is her Venusian instinct kicking in. She sees a struggle, and she wants to support him.
Perfectly logical to her.
But instead of saying thank you, Tom becomes furious. He goes completely silent. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife, and the rest of the evening is totally ruined. Mary is sitting in the passenger seat, utterly baffled. She's thinking, I love you, you were struggling, so I offered help. Why are you punishing me?
Mary is looking at the situation strictly through a Venusian lens. On Venus, offering help is the highest form of caring. But Tom is operating on Martian logic.
Right.
What Tom heard wasn't, I love you and I want to support you. What Tom heard was, I do not trust you to get us there. You are incompetent and you are failing as a provider.
Wow.
Yeah. On Mars, offering unsolicited advice is considered a major insult. You only offer advice or step in to help if another Martian explicitly asks for it.
Because asking for help is an admission that they've exhausted their own competence.
Exactly. Mary had no idea that when Tom got lost, it wasn't just a logistical problem. It was actually a crucial opportunity for her to demonstrate trust in him.
So if she had just sat back, relaxed, and trusted him to figure it out, she would have honored him deeply.
Yes.
But by offering the advice, she accidentally signaled that she thought he was broken and needed her fixing.
That's it, exactly.
You know, when I read about the Mr. Fix-It response, the way men try to instantly solve a woman's emotional distress, it immediately made me think of dealing with a rogue IT guy at an office.
Oh, that's a good analogy. How so?
Well, imagine you're at work, right? And you are incredibly stressed out because a software program keeps crashing. You call the IT guy not because you expect him to instantly rewrite the code, but because you just want to vent for a second.
Right. You want to complain about the computer.
Yeah. You want him to say, yeah, that software is an absolute nightmare. I completely understand why you're frustrated. I'm so sorry. That empathy is what you're actually seeking.
Empathy, yeah.
But instead, the IT guy just coldly closes your support ticket with a highly technical workaround that involves you doing 10 extra incredibly annoying steps.
Yeah.
He solved the problem, technically, but he completely and totally invalidated your emotional frustration in the process. He fixed the software but broke the connection.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
The IT guy is functioning purely on Martian values. He sees a problem, he formulates an efficient solution, and he deploys it. He believes he has successfully concluded the interaction.
But the user is furious.
Right. He has no idea that the user, in this case the Venusian, feels dismissed and unheard. The user didn't want a workaround. The user wanted validation that the system was indeed frustrating.
Right. But here's where it gets a little complicated for me, and I want to challenge this framework a bit. If autonomy is so absolutely crucial to a man, if his ego is that tied to doing everything himself, how does a woman ever actually help him without deeply offending him?
It's a great question.
Because if you're in a partnership, you have to help each other. It can't just be two people operating in total silos.
That is the pivotal question, and the answer comes down entirely to timing and approach. The key insight Greya offers here is that a man actually does appreciate the home improvement committee, but only under a very specific condition.
When he asks for it.
Exactly. When he explicitly requests it. If he feels that a woman is approaching him as the solution to a shared problem, rather than treating him like he is the problem that needs fixing, he is incredibly receptive. He loves providing solutions.
Oh, okay.
Similarly, a woman absolutely appreciates Mr. Fix-It, but not when she is actively in a state of emotional upset. She needs to be heard first.
So if a man can offer pure empathy while she's upset, he can offer his practical solutions later.
Yes, once she is calm and feeling validated. When our partner resists our help, it's rarely because they don't want support. It's usually because we have fundamentally misjudged our timing and our approach.
Okay, so a lot of this is about reading the room, or rather, reading the native planet of the person sitting across from you.
Right.
And if we follow that thread, it leads us directly into how these wildly different planetary values affect the way we handle the single most common daily obstacle in any life, which is stress.
Stress is a big one.
Because our baseline values are so inherently different, the ways we react to stress are completely opposite. And if you don't understand this opposition, it becomes a massive fertile breeding ground for long-term resentment. This brings us to a really famous concept from the book The Cave versus the Talk.
Let's examine the Martian cave first, because it is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in male psychology.
It really is.
When a man is under severe stress, his instinct is to completely withdraw. He retreats into the private cave of his mind to focus all of his energy on the single most urgent or difficult problem.
Right.
This isn't him being malicious. It is a hardwired survival mechanism. He becomes so intensely focused on solving this one specific issue that he temporarily loses awareness of everything else around him.
Wow.
Gray notes that during these periods, a man might only have about 5% of his mental bandwidth available for anything outside of that core problem.
For only 5%.
Just 5%. That includes his relationship, his environment, and his daily tasks. To the outside observer, he becomes distant, forgetful, and highly unresponsive.
If his entire identity is based on solving things, and he's facing a massive problem he can't immediately crack, I imagine his brain just kind of short circuits. What happens if he's in the cave and a solution doesn't present itself?
That's the danger zone.
Yeah, he can't just stay in a state of intense, agonizing focus forever, right? He must have to find some sort of a distraction just to reset his system.
You're touching on something crucial about the mechanics of the cave. If he can't find a solution, he does indeed get stuck. And the only way for him to get unstuck is to distract himself with minor, highly solvable challenges.
Which explains so much.
Exactly. This is exactly why a deeply stressed man will suddenly bury himself in the daily news, or go play an intense game of basketball, or sit down and intensely watch a football game.
To a Venusian, these activities look like a total waste of time.
Right, but for the Martian, these activities require just that 5% of his conscious mind, allowing him to safely disengage from his primary overwhelming stressor. He is vicariously solving problems like watching his team score points or figuring out a crossword puzzle, and that process slowly releases the internal tension.
Allowing him to gradually transition out of the cave.
Yes.
I was thinking about this, and it reminds me of a computer running a background defragmentation process to free up its RAM.
Oh, I love that.
Right. If you're just looking at the computer screen, it seems like the machine is just sitting there doing absolutely nothing important. You might even think it's completely frozen.
It's just a spinning wheel.
Exactly. But underneath the surface, the processor is working furiously, moving blocks of data around, organizing fragmented files so the machine can actually function properly again. Watching a 3-hour football game when the garage needs cleaning is a man's background defrag.
It's a perfect way to look at it.
But here is the major friction point. This is where I really want to push into the listener's experience. If you are the woman in this scenario, doesn't this leave you feeling totally, utterly abandoned?
It does.
If he only has 5% of his bandwidth available for you, how are you supposed to handle a suddenly vacant partner? That doesn't feel like a partnership.
The feeling of abandonment you are describing is very real, and it's incredibly painful for women. And the reason it hurts so much is because on Venus, stress is handled in the exact opposite manner.
It's a talk.
The talk. When a Venusian is stressed, she doesn't isolate. She seeks relief by finding someone she trusts deeply and talking openly about her problems in sweeping detail.
Right.
And she doesn't prioritize or logically order the problems. She talks about past problems, future problems, and even potential problems that don't have any logical solutions.
Yeah.
The act of expressing herself and feeling emotionally understood is the relief mechanism.
So for a woman, sharing problems is a profound sign of love, intimacy, and trust. It isn't a burden.
Exactly. So when her male partner is stressed and suddenly goes completely silent and withdraws into his cave, she instinctively interprets his behavior through her Venusian lens.
Right, because on Venus, you only ignore someone if you fundamentally do not care about them anymore.
She assumes his silence is a direct reflection of his lack of love for her.
Which is a catastrophic misunderstanding. She is sitting there thinking he's emotionally abandoning the relationship while he is literally just trying to reboot his hard drive so he can be a functioning person again.
Right.
Gray highlights the danger of this misunderstanding with a really incredible, vivid anecdote about a Native American tribe. He writes that the mothers in this tribe would sit down with their daughters right before they got married to warn them about this exact male phenomenon.
The dragon.
Yes. They told the young women that when a man is deeply upset or stressed, he will withdraw into his cave. And the absolute unbreakable golden rule was that she must never follow him into the cave. If she tried to follow him in, she would inevitably get burned by the dragon that protects the entrance to the cave.
It's such a brilliant, vivid warning against the danger of chasing a man when his biology is demanding space.
Yeah.
When women don't understand the mechanics of the cave, their nurturing instinct kicks in. They try to pull the man out of the cave before he is mentally ready. They hover. They ask probing questions.
Like, what's wrong? Why aren't you talking to me?
Don't you care about us? To the woman, this is an act of deep love and concern. But to the man, who is using 95% of his brain to hold back his stress, this feels like an aggressive attack on his internal process.
He feels demanded to speak when his mind is literally blank.
That is when the dragon comes out.
Right.
He snaps, he gets fiercely angry, and he says hurtful things he will deeply regret later.
Wow.
The core lesson Gray imparts here is that peace in a relationship is only found when women learn to not take the cave personally. They have to trust the process and realize that if they leave him alone, he will eventually emerge.
And conversely.
Peace happens when men learn that listening to a woman vent without trying to fix a single one of her problems is actually the single most effective way to pull her out of her own stress.
So we have this dynamic where stress naturally pushes Martians and Venusians in completely opposite directions. He retreats to the isolated cave. She desperately wants to gather and talk. If our natural reactions push us apart, what actually pulls us back together?
That's the real question.
Right. If you are listening to this and wondering how to bridge that gap, we have to look at the completely different ways the two sexes are motivated to give love. This is where this deep dive takes us into Gray's concepts of needing versus cherishing.
This is a profound shift in how we understand relationship motivation. Let's start with Mars again. Men are fundamentally motivated and empowered when they feel needed.
Needed?
Gray argues that not feeling needed is essentially a slow psychological death for a man. If he feels useless, it causes him to become passive, lethargic, and deeply depressed. But when a man feels that he is genuinely trusted to fulfill a woman's needs, and he sees that he is appreciated for his efforts, it awakens his power. He desperately wants to prove his potential.
Okay.
Gray uses a great illustrative myth here. He says before the Martians discovered the Venusians, they were all depressed and stuck in their caves. But when they looked through their telescopes and saw the Venusians and realized their unique Martian power could bring these beautiful beings fulfillment and happiness, their depression instantly lifted.
Wow.
They were motivated by the sheer possibility of serving and being needed.
It's the classic knight in shining armor complex. He needs a dragon to slay to feel alive. But if you look at the Venusian side, how are women motivated? I'm guessing it's an equal but completely opposite driver.
You're exactly right.
If a Venusian's whole identity is based on the quality of her relationships, her motivation must be tied to feeling deeply valued within that specific relationship, right?
Yes, women are motivated and empowered when they feel cherished. When a woman feels deeply cared for, genuinely respected, and emotionally supported, she feels fulfilled, and she magically has an abundance of love to give back to her partner.
But when she doesn't feel cherished?
A very dangerous mechanism triggers. She falls into the trap of compulsive responsibility. She becomes entirely exhausted from giving too much. Gray explains that on Venus, they traditionally lived by a lose-win philosophy. They believed that to be a good person, they had to sacrifice their own needs so that others could win. They were martyrs. But over centuries, this constant self-sacrifice led to a deep, toxic buildup of resentment.
That trap of overgiving is so insidious, and I know so many listeners can relate to this. A woman just gives and gives and gives, secretly assuming the man will naturally reciprocate because that is what another Venusian would do. She expects him to read her mind and step up.
Right.
But men don't operate on a lose-win philosophy. Men naturally operate on a win-lose philosophy, which eventually evolves into a win-win if the relationship is healthy. A man will give a lot of effort, and then he will purposefully sit back to receive his reward. If the woman keeps giving with a smile on her face, he looks at the scoreboard and assumes everything is perfectly even. He has absolutely no idea that underneath her smile, she is building up a massive mountain of resentment.
That dynamic destroys so many marriages, and Gray illustrates this beautifully with the counseling story of Jim and Susan.
Right.
They had been married for 12 long years. Susan came into therapy wanting a divorce because she felt she had given absolutely everything to the marriage, and Jim had given nothing in return. She blamed him entirely for being lethargic, unromantic, and emotionally absent.
Which makes sense from her perspective.
Totally. During their therapy sessions, Jim had to learn the first crucial step he had to learn to simply listen and take responsibility for not supporting her. He had to validate her years of pain without getting defensive.
That's hard for a Martian.
Very hard. But Gray points out that Susan actually had the much harder job. Yes, she had to take responsibility for her own lack of boundaries. She had to learn to physically stop overgiving. She had to learn to set limits. And most terrifyingly for a Venusian, she had to actually use her words and ask for what she wanted.
Oh, wow.
When Jim learned to respect her new limits, it paradoxically woke him up.
Yeah.
It motivated him to give more because he finally had a clear target to hit.
This brings up one of the most fascinating paradoxes in the entire text, and it's something that I think is really hard to swallow. A woman giving less actually wakes a man up and makes him want to give more.
Yes.
When she finally stops overfunctioning and doing everything for him, he suddenly steps up to fill the void. But if you are a woman listening to this, you might be wondering why that is so hard to do in practice. Why is it so utterly terrifying for a woman to stop giving and simply allow herself to receive? On paper, it sounds like a vacation. You get to do less. But women struggle with this intensely.
It's because it triggers their deepest, most unconscious fears.
What are those fears?
Women fear receiving because, on a subconscious level, many believe they are fundamentally unworthy of love. They carry this deep-seated fear that if they don't constantly earn their partner's love through endless giving and sacrifice, they will be abandoned.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Opening up to just receive love without having paid for it with labor makes them feel incredibly vulnerable. If they ask for support and are rejected, it confirms their absolute darkest fear that they are indeed unworthy.
And what about men?
Men, on the other hand, are driven by an entirely different fear. They are driven by the fear of incompetence. A man's deepest fear is that he is simply not good enough. So men fear giving because they are terrified of trying to provide for a woman and failing.
Because failure means incompetence.
Exactly. If a man tries his hardest to help and the woman is still unhappy or critical, it confirms his deepest fear of inadequacy. So as a defense mechanism, he just stops trying altogether.
Okay, let's really unpack this because this is where the rubber meets the road. We have men who are secretly terrified of failing and women who are secretly terrified of being unworthy.
Right. Even if we recognize these fears, and even if we truly, genuinely want to support each other, our best intentions can still hit a massive brick wall. Why? Because, as Gray points out, we are literally speaking different emotional languages. Our words get completely lost in translation.
They really do.
Gray actually provides a Martian-Venusian phrase dictionary in the book to help with this. Let's look at how Venusians speak first, because this causes so much friction.
Venusians use language primarily to express the fullness of their emotions in the moment, not necessarily to convey literal historical facts.
So it's more about the feeling than the facts.
Exactly. Because of this, they heavily utilize poetic license, broad generalities, and absolute superlatives. For example, a woman who is feeling overwhelmed might sigh and say, "We never go out anymore."
Right.
To another Venusian, the translation is obvious. It means, "I am feeling a little disconnected today. I feel like going out and doing something fun together. It's been a few days, and I'd love to spend some quality time with you."
Yeah.
She is expressing a temporary, momentary feeling of longing. But the Martian sitting across the room does not hear a momentary feeling of longing. His brain processes language literally. He hears a direct, factual attack on his historical record as a provider.
Which triggers his defense mechanisms.
Instantly. When she says, "We never go out," his Martian defense systems activate. He immediately gets defensive and fires back, "What do you mean we never go out? I just took you to that expensive Italian place last Friday."
Yes.
He completely invalidates her underlying feeling because he is too busy defending the factual accuracy of his behavior. He assumes she is looking him in the eye and saying, "You are a total disappointment as a partner and you never do anything to make me happy."
And that rapid escalation happens in living rooms every single night. But the misinterpretation definitely goes both ways.
How so?
When a man is stressed, he uses what Gray calls Martian abbreviations. A classic everyday example is a man retreating to his cave and saying, "I'm fine," or "it's nothing."
Oh, those are dangerous words.
Very. To a Venusian who values open, detailed communication above all else, hearing "I'm fine" when she clearly sees he is upset translates as a massive rejection. She hears, "I don't love you, I don't trust you to handle my emotions, and I am actively choosing to shut you out of my life." She feels entirely abandoned.
When in reality, if you run it through the translation dictionary, what he actually means is, "I am dealing with a significant upset right now. I need to process this alone. I do not need your help. I'm not rejecting you. Please just give me some space to figure this out, and I promise I will be okay."
Right. He's just managing the entrance to his cave.
But the language barrier gets even trickier and honestly a bit more controversial when women try to actively ask men for support. There is a very specific linguistic rule Gray outlines here that completely blew my mind. He says women should almost never use the phrase, "could you?"
Oh, this is a big one.
For instance, asking your husband, "Could you empty the trash?"
Yes, this is a major, often invisible trigger on Mars. When you ask a man, "Could you empty the trash?" or "Can you help me with this box?" Shuk, you are technically, literally asking a question about his physical ability.
Bye.
On Mars, where competence is king, to question a man's capability is a subtle insult.
Yeah.
It implies that you don't actually know if he has the competence or the strength to complete the task. To his subconscious, of course, he can empty the trash. He's a capable Martian. The real question you were trying to ask is whether he will do it.
I have to admit, when I first read this, I laughed out loud. I love the concept, but it's like walking up to Superman and asking, "Excuse me, Clark, do you possess the physical, muscular strength required to lift this plastic garbage bag?"
Exactly.
It's insulting the very competence he prides himself on. But honestly, I want to push back on this a little bit because if you're a modern listener, this might rub you the wrong way. Is it really fair that women have to tiptoe around these incredibly fragile male egos with this highly specific, micromanaged phrasing?
It's a common reaction to have.
I hear the logic, but if I have to run every single one of my requests through a linguistic filter just to get the garbage taken out without a sigh or a fight, I'm going to build up my own resentment. It feels like walking on eggshells.
It's completely understandable to feel that way, and many people have the exact same reaction to this chapter. But Gray emphasizes that you shouldn't view it as tiptoeing around a fragile ego. You should view it as cultural translation.
Cultural translation, okay.
It's about showing respect for a fundamentally different psychological makeup. Remember, on Mars, offering unsolicited help or questioning someone's ability is inherently rude in their native culture. By changing a single two-letter word, using "Would you empty the trash?" or "Will you empty the trash?" instead of "Could you," a woman completely changes the energetic dynamic of the request.
She acknowledges his competence implicitly.
Yes. She is no longer questioning his ability. She is issuing an invitation for him to step up and be the hero she needs. This aligns absolutely perfectly with his primary psychological motivation to feel needed. It turns a grating demand into a respectful request, which actually gives him the freedom to cheerfully say yes.
Okay, I can see the utility in that. It's a small tweak that yields a massive reduction in friction, so we learn to translate our words. But Gray says that words aren't enough. We also have to translate our behavioral cycles.
The cycles are huge.
Intimacy in a long-term relationship is not a flat, consistent line. For both sexes, intimacy has violent, unpredictable biological rhythms. And if you don't understand these rhythms, you will think your relationship is dying when it's actually just breathing. Let's look at the male cycle first. Gray uses a very famous metaphor here. He says, men are like rubber bands.
This might be the most enduring metaphor from the entire book. The male intimacy cycle inherently involves getting very close, pulling away, and then getting close again. It operates exactly like a natural spring mechanism. A man will get very close and deeply intimate with a woman. He will be loving and present. But eventually, He will hit his emotional limit for intimacy. He will feel a sudden, biological, instinctive urge to pull away and reestablish his autonomy.
To retreat.
He needs to stretch away from his partner to his maximum distance. And this is the crucial part. When he reaches that absolute limit of distance, the tension in the rubber band returns. He suddenly feels the acute desire to spring back into intimacy. He comes back with renewed power, passion, and focus.
But here's the terrifying part for the partner watching this happen. If you take a physical rubber band and you pull it too far, it snaps. It breaks.
Right.
How does a woman who is watching her partner drift away know the difference between a man who is just taking his natural healthy space to stretch the rubber band and a man who is actually abandoning the relationship? Because from the outside, if he's just going cold and pulling away, it looks exactly like he's falling out of love.
That is the terrifying gray area that causes so much unnecessary panic in relationships. When a man starts his natural withdrawal, a woman often panics because her Venusian instinct is to draw closer.
So she chases him.
She tries to chase him. She might follow him physically from room to room, or she might chase him emotionally by constantly asking, "What's wrong? Why are you being so distant? Talk to me."
And what happens then?
Grade points out a fatal flaw here. If she chases him, she actively prevents the rubber band from stretching.
Yeah.
Because she is moving with him, the band goes completely slack. He never gets to feel that necessary tension of missing her, so he never feels the urge to spring back. He just remains in a state of distant irritability.
So how do they avoid this?
The key to preventing the snap of abandonment is dual responsibility. First, the man must learn to offer reassurance before he pulls away. He needs to learn to say 4 simple magic words. "I will be back."
I will be back.
Or, "I
Gotcha.
just need some time, but we are good." That reassurance is the anchor that allows the woman to let him stretch without panicking.
That makes total sense. Give him the anchor, let him stretch, and trust the snapback. But women have their own intense, often confusing cycle. While men are characterized as rubber bands, Gray says women are like waves.
Yes. A woman's self-esteem, her mood, and her ability to give love rise and fall rhythmically, much like an ocean wave.
Okay.
When she feels loved and supported, her wave rises to a beautiful peak. She is radiant and giving. But suddenly, often without any logical warning or external trigger, the mood can shift and the wave crashes down into what Gray calls the well.
The well.
Hitting the bottom of the well is a necessary time for emotional house cleaning. All the negative feelings, the doubts, and the insecurities that she suppressed while she was riding high suddenly come to the very surface of her consciousness. She feels intensely vulnerable, needy, and overwhelmed by her emotions.
And if you are the Martian standing on the shore watching this wave crash, it is utterly baffling. You are thinking, we were just having a fantastic weekend. My behavior hasn't changed at all. I didn't do anything wrong. Why is she suddenly so deeply unhappy?
He immediately assumes he did something to cause it.
Or worse, he looks at her and thinks she is emotionally broken and requires immediate fixing. Gray tells a really poignant story about a couple named Chris and Pam to illustrate how dangerous this misunderstanding can be.
Oh, the story about wealth.
Yes. They were a couple who were actually very happy when they were young, poor, and struggling. When Pam's wave would crash and she would feel overwhelmed, Chris would hold her, listen to her, and empathize with her pain, largely because they were both broke and stressed.
Right.
But later in life, they became very wealthy. They had massive successful careers and a beautiful home. Yet, inevitably, Pam's wave still crashed. She still felt overwhelmed and sad. But this time, Chris was furious. He felt betrayed.
He didn't understand.
He thought his newly provided financial security should have acted as a permanent wall preventing her wave from ever crashing. He basically told her she had no logical right to be upset when they had so much money.
Chris had to learn an incredibly hard lesson about Venusian biology. Wealth, status, and privilege do not exempt a woman from the emotional well.
No, they don't.
Her crashing wave wasn't a complaint about his ability to provide. It was a natural, internal cycle of emotional release. Chris had to learn that when her wave crashes, he absolutely does not have to fix her. She isn't broken.
He just has to be there.
He had to go back to doing exactly what he did naturally when they were poor, just listening without judgment. A woman has an incredible innate ability to spontaneously rise back up out of the well if she simply feels safe, heard, and validated while she is down there in the dark.
But if he tries to fix her...
If a man panics and tries to pull her out prematurely, or if he tells her logically why she shouldn't feel that way, she actually gets stuck in the well. His attempt to fix her is what prolongs the depression.
So, misunderstanding these completely natural cycles, the stretching of the rubber band and the crashing of the wave, inevitably leads to deep, festering resentment. And resentment introduces arguably the most dangerous dynamic in any long-term relationship, which is keeping score incorrectly. Welcome to the relationship scoreboard.
The scoreboard is brutal.
If you think you and your partner are keeping score the same way, prepare to have your mind blown. It turns out Martians and Venusians use entirely different systems of mathematics to calculate love.
They absolutely do, and it is a source of endless conflict. Let's look at Martian math first.
Okay, lay it on me.
Men think that love points are awarded based on the objective size, the financial cost, or the sheer energy expenditure of the gift. So in a man's mind, buying his wife a brand new car, that massive gesture scores 50 points.
50 points.
Taking her on a luxurious week-long vacation, that's 30 points. Working overtime to pay the mortgage, 20 points. Handing her a single rose on a Tuesday, that's just 1 point.
So it's heavily weighted.
Very. A man will exert massive energy to do one huge expensive thing, score his 50 points, and then he will proudly sit back completely exhausted, thinking he is covered for the entire month. He expects her to live happily off the residual glow of those 50 points.
But Venusian math operates on a totally different frequency. To a woman, every single gift of love, regardless of its size, its financial cost, or the effort required, scores exactly 1 point.
Just 1 point.
That expensive 30-point vacation. In her ledger, it scores 1 point.
Yep.
Taking out the trash without being asked, 1 point. Bringing her a hot cup of tea while she's reading, 1 point. Giving her a hug before leaving for work, 1 point. A woman's love tank doesn't have a massive reserve capacity. It operates like a gas tank that has a slow, persistent leak. It needs constant, small daily top-offs to stay full.
Exactly. And realizing this discrepancy is a huge revelation for men. Understanding this math is actually incredibly liberating for a Martian.
Liberating? How so?
A man doesn't have to kill himself working 80 hours a week to achieve massive financial success just to earn his partner's love. Doing a dozen small, consistent things, opening the car door, making a quick 3-minute phone call during his lunch break just to check in, actively listening to her talk for 10 minutes without offering a solution. Those small acts easily and consistently outscore the grand, exhausting, expensive gestures in a woman's eyes.
Right.
On Venus, it is entirely about the frequency of the love, not the magnitude of the gesture.
I love comparing the man's scoring system here to a really arrogant college student. Imagine a student who writes one absolutely incredible A-plus 50-page term paper on the very first day of the semester.
Okay, I see where this is going.
He hands it in, and then he assumes he doesn't have to show up for a single one of the daily quizzes for the rest of the year. He thinks his one massive achievement covers his overall grade. But the professor who is operating like the Venusian in this scenario is grading strictly on daily attendance and participation.
Yeah.
And when this math gets skewed, when the man stops showing up for the daily quizzes because he thinks his term paper covered him, we hit the absolute danger zone, penalty points, and the resentment flu.
Yes, the math can turn punitive very quickly. When women fall into that trap of giving too much and ignoring their own needs, they catch what Gray calls the resentment flu.
The resentment flu.
When a woman is sick with resentment, a terrifying mathematical shift happens. She suddenly subtracts all the man's previously earned points. He might have earned 40 points that week, but if she feels she has given 50 points and he hasn't reciprocated, she zeroes out his entire score.
Wow.
Her resentment completely blocks her biological ability to appreciate anything he has done. Men, on the other hand, deal in penalty points.
Penalty points.
When a man feels unappreciated, criticized by the Home Improvement Committee, or unloved, he lashes out by giving minus points. He unfairly wipes out a woman's past loving actions because he feels acutely rejected in the present moment. Both are highly destructive defense mechanisms born from miscalculated math.
So even if you manage to understand the scoring system and you respect the rubber bands and the waves, the reality is that conflicts are still going to happen. You cannot avoid disagreements entirely when two different species live in the same house.
Unavoidable.
The real question is, how do we argue without completely destroying the foundation of the relationship? Gray says the secret to healthy conflict resolution comes down to understanding your partner's deepest primary emotional needs. He outlines 12 distinct kinds of love, 6 native to each planet.
This is a really powerful framework for diagnosing why a fight is happening. Men and women absolutely need all 12 kinds of love, but they have different primary needs that must be met first.
Okay, what are they?
Men primarily need trust, acceptance, appreciation, admiration, approval, and encouragement. If a man receives these specific forms of love, his ego feels safe and he feels truly loved. Women, however, primarily need caring, understanding, respect, devotion, validation, and reassurance.
So completely different priorities.
Right. And the massive trap that couples fall into is the golden rule we naturally give what we want to receive. A woman wants caring and understanding, so she gives a man caring and understanding.
Which he interprets as her treating him like a fragile child who needs fixing.
Exactly, thus violating his primary need for trust. A man wants trust and acceptance, so he gives a woman trust and acceptance by leaving her alone when she's upset.
Which she instantly interprets as him ignoring her, violating her primary need for caring.
Yes.
Which leads us right into the anatomy of how an argument actually explodes. Gray points out something so true it hurts. Arguments almost never escalate over the actual issue at hand. You aren't really fighting about the dishes. The argument escalates over how the issue is being discussed.
Right.
We unknowingly trigger each other's deepest primary insecurities. Let's look at how this happens. Men unknowingly trigger massive arguments by invalidating a woman's feelings. She says she's deeply upset about her day, and he, trying to be helpful and offer his Martian acceptance, says, "Don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, you'll figure it out."
He thinks he's being reassuring.
But she feels completely dismissed and invalidated. Her primary need is crushed. Women, on the other hand, trigger arguments by expressing disapproval. He is 20 minutes late, and she says, "How could you be so late again? You're always so thoughtless." She is simply trying to express her Venusian frustration, but he hears that he's a complete failure, and she disapproves of his entire character. His primary need for approval is crushed.
And the moment those primary emotional needs are threatened, our brains panic. We retreat into our hardwired defense mechanisms, which Gray brilliantly categorizes as the 4 Fs of arguing.
The 4 Fs.
On Mars, the default defenses are fight or flight. A man who feels his competence is under attack will either aggressively fight to defend his logic and his honor, turning the living room into a courtroom, or he will take flight by retreating permanently into his cave, refusing to engage, and creating a punishing cold war of silence.
And on
Venus, the defenses are fake or fold. A woman who feels her relationships are threatened will fake that everything is fine, plastering on a painful smile to avoid conflict while quietly building a mountain of toxic resentment. Or she will fold, constantly taking the blame for everything just to appease her partner and keep the peace, eventually losing her entire sense of self in the process.
Gray even shares a very vulnerable story about himself and his wife Bonnie falling into these exact traps, proving that even the expert isn't immune.
It's so true.
Bonnie had to realize how to ask John for help without lacing her requests with subtle disapproval, which always made John instantly defensive. And Jen had to realize that his instinct to logically defend his actions was systematically invalidating Bonnie's feelings. He had to learn to just sit there and validate her upset without making it a courtroom battle over the timeline of facts.
Validation is key.
Gray mentions using tools like love letters or response letters, literally sitting down and writing out your feelings when verbal talking turns into defensive fighting as a circuit breaker. But I want to ask you about a much simpler, faster tool. He discusses the act of apologizing. The text notes that men rarely say "I'm sorry" because on Mars, an apology is a literal, legal admission that I did something factually wrong and I am guilty.
Right.
But women use the phrase "I'm sorry" completely differently. They use it to mean I care about your feelings and I empathize with your pain. Can a man learning to just say "I'm sorry" in the Venusian dialect actually short-circuit a massive fight?
It is arguably the single most effective de-escalation tool a man possesses. If a man can learn to speak this specific bit of Venusian using the words "I'm sorry" as an expression of pure, unadulterated empathy rather than a terrifying admission of guilt, it completely disarms the escalation of an argument.
It's magical.
It is. When she looks at him and says, "I'm so utterly overwhelmed with the house right now," and he suppresses his Mr. Fix-It urge and simply says, "I'm so sorry you are feeling so stressed today," he is directly validating her primary need for understanding and caring. He isn't saying the messy house is his fault. He isn't admitting defeat.
He is simply honoring her emotional state.
Yes. That simple, profound validation acts as water on a fire, preventing the argument from ever taking root.
So, bringing all of this together, if you're listening to this and you apply these tools, well, if you understand the origin of the amnesia, if you translate the languages of could versus would, If you respect the stretching of the rubber bands and the crashing of the waves, and if you fix your internal scoreboard, it actually allows couples to sustain love over the long haul.
Absolutely.
But Gray leaves us with a final vital reminder. He reminds us that love, much like nature itself, has its seasons. We have to learn to accept the natural ebb and flow.
That really is the ultimate grounding takeaway from Chapter 13. We have to stop expecting permanent perfection. Love has distinct seasons. There's the spring of love, where you first meet, and everything is effortless, magical, and full of potential.
But spring always inevitably gives way to summer.
Summer is the season of hard work, sweating under the sun, and pulling the tedious weeds out of our relationship garden. It is where you realize your partner isn't perfect. If we put in the grueling work during the summer, we get to enjoy the fall, a beautiful time of reaping the harvest of mature, generous, and abundant love.
That then comes winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eventually, no matter how hard you work, winter comes. Winter is a natural time of feeling emotionally empty, of resting, and of psychological hibernation. It is the hardest season. We must not panic when winter or summer arrives. We must use the translation tools we've discussed today to weather the storms and the droughts, trusting deeply that spring will eventually always return.
And as we wrap up every deep dive, we always have to ask the core question, why does this specific text matter, and who benefits most from reading it? This book matters because, at its core, it fundamentally removes the assumption of malice from our partner's actions.
That is so important.
When your partner withdraws into silence or when your partner vents endlessly about a problem, you can stop seeing it as a personal attack on you and start seeing it as an expression of their native planetary biology. It beautifully replaces toxic blame with structural understanding. It benefits absolutely anyone who feels frustrated, chronically misunderstood, or utterly exhausted in their relationship. It gives you the necessary blueprint to finally decode the alien sitting across from you at the dinner table.
It does. It gives us the profound permission to stop trying to ruthlessly change our partners into carbon copies of ourselves. We can finally relax and appreciate them for the beautifully different Martians and Venusians they actually are.
Exactly. Make sure you subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss an exploration of the ideas that shape our lives. And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one. Until next time, I want you to think about this the very next time your partner does something that completely baffles or frustrates you. Instead of immediately getting angry or defensive, pause and ask yourself, are they trying to hurt me, or are they just speaking a native language I haven't quite learned to translate yet?